Welcome to Riddle Paradox. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. This video contains discussions of sensitive and disturbing topics, including violence, death, and real-life tragedies that may be upsetting. All content is for educational and entertainment purposes only, based on publicly available information. We honor the victims and their families and do not condone or glorify any form of violence.
The wind howled like a banshee across the vast, indifferent expanse of the Atlantic, whipping the sails of the Dei Gratia into a frenzy. It was December 4th, 1872, and Captain David Morehouse stood on the deck, his eyes narrowed against the salt spray, scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble or opportunity. His brigantine, laden with goods bound for Gibraltar, cut through the waves with purposeful grace, but something ahead caught his eye. A ship, drifting aimlessly, her sails flapping erratically as if caught in a perpetual argument with the breeze. Mr. DeVoe, Morehouse called to his first mate, Oliver DeVoe, his voice steady but laced with curiosity. "What do you make of that vessel yonder? She's not holding course." DeVoe raised his spyglass, the brass cold against his palm. The ship was a brigantine like their own, her hull painted black, her nameplate glinting faintly in the weak winter sun. Mary Celeste. "She's yawing badly, sir. No one at the helm by the looks of it. And her sails, some set, others torn or furled improperly. Could be in distress." Morehouse felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. He knew that ship. The Mary Celeste had sailed from New York just 8 days before his own departure, under the command of Benjamin Briggs, a man he respected, a fellow captain from the same tight-knit maritime circles. They had even dined together before Briggs set out. What could have befallen her so soon? "Alter course," Morehouse ordered, his heart quickening. "We'll hail her and offer assistance." As the Dei Gratia drew nearer, the silence from the other ship grew oppressive, broken only by the creak of her rigging and the slap of waves against her hull. No answering call, no figures on deck. The Mary Celeste rolled gently in the swell, a ghost adrift on the living sea. DeVoe and a small boarding party rowed over, the oars dipping rhythmically into the gray water. Climbing aboard, they found the deck deserted, hatches open, a faint scent of damp wood and something metallic lingering in the air. The wheel spun lazily, unsecured. Below, the cabins were tidy but abandoned. Beds made, a child's toy left on a bunk, a half-sewn dress draped over a chair. In the galley, breakfast lay uneaten, eggs congealed on plates, coffee cold in mugs. The cargo hold brimmed with barrels of alcohol, intact and undisturbed. But the crew, the captain, his wife, their young daughter, vanished. The lifeboat was gone, the chronometer and navigation papers missing. A sword, streaked with what looked like blood, hung in the captain's quarters. DeVoe's pulse raced as he searched for any sign of violence or struggle. Nothing. It was as if the souls aboard had simply evaporated into the mist. Back on the Dei Gratia, Morehouse listened to the report, his face paling. Salvage her, he decided, the weight of the mystery settling like fog. We'll take her to Gibraltar and let the authorities unravel this enigma. But as the two ships sailed in tandem, the empty Mary Celeste trailing like a shadow, Morehouse couldn't shake the dread that whatever had claimed her people might still lurk in the depths below, or in the secrets she carried. Weeks earlier, in the bustling harbor of New York, the Mary Celeste bobbed gently at her moorings, her decks alive with the clamor of preparation. It was November 5th, 1872, and Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs, a sturdy man of 37 with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that held the steady gaze of the sea, oversaw the loading of cargo. Barrels of denatured alcohol, 1701 of them, were hoisted aboard, destined for Genoa, Italy. The air smelled of tar and brine, mingled with the sharp tang of the spirits. Briggs was no stranger to command. Born into a seafaring family in Wareham, Massachusetts, he had risen through the ranks with a reputation for piety and prudence. A devout Christian, he abstained from alcohol and led his crews with a firm but fair hand. This voyage, though, carried a personal weight. His wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia Matilda, would accompany him. Their son, Arthur, remained behind with relatives, too young for the perils of the ocean. Sarah Briggs, elegant in her traveling dress, stood on the dock, cradling Sophia in her arms. At 31, she was a woman of quiet strength, her dark hair pinned neatly, her smile warm but tinged with the melancholy of leaving home. "Benjamin, are you certain this is wise?" she had asked him the night before as they packed their trunks in their Staten Island home. The Atlantic in winter, it's unforgiving. He had taken her hands, his touch reassuring. "The Mary Celeste is sound, my love. She's been refitted, and I've handpicked the crew. We'll be in Genoa before Christmas." His confidence was infectious, but deep down, Briggs harbored his own doubts. The ship had a checkered past, originally named Amazon. She had suffered mishaps, including a collision and a captain's untimely death. Renamed Mary Celeste, she seemed cursed no more, but superstitions lingered among sailors. The crew assembled. 7 men, a mix of Americans, Germans, and Danes, all seasoned hands. First mate Albert Richardson, a reliable New Englander. Second, mate Andrew Gilling, young and eager, steward Edward Head, who doubled as cook. And the 4 able seamen, Volkert and Arian Lorenzen, brothers from Germany, Bas Lorenzen, no relation, and Gottlieb Goodshod, a Dane. They were a solid lot, Briggs thought, as he reviewed their papers. No troublemakers, no drinkers, aligning with his teetotaler ways. As the sun dipped low, casting golden hues over the harbor, Briggs gathered his family and crew on deck for a prayer. "Lord, guide us through the tempests and grant us safe passage," he intoned, his voice carrying over the water. Sarah played a melancholy tune on her melodeon, a small organ she insisted on bringing, its notes weaving through the evening air like a farewell. 2 days later, on November 7th, with a fair wind, the Mary Celeste slipped her lines and sailed into the open sea. The city skyline faded, replaced by the endless blue. Briggs stood at the helm, Sophia giggling in his arms, unaware of the shadows that might await. Little did they know, this voyage would etch their names into the annals of maritime lore, not for triumph, but for an absence that defied explanation. The first days at sea unfolded with the rhythmic predictability of ocean life. The Mary Celeste sliced through the waves, her sails billowing under a crisp northeasterly breeze. Captain Briggs maintained a disciplined routine, morning prayers, navigation checks, and evening gatherings where Sarah's melodeon filled the air with hymns and folk songs. The crew, initially reserved, warmed to the family's presence. Sophia's laughter echoed across the deck, a bright counterpoint to the vast, isolating sea. In the captain's cabin, Briggs pored over charts by lamplight, his logbook open beside him. November 10th, fair weather, making good speed, crew in fine. Spirits. He glanced at Sarah, who sat sewing a dress for Sophia, the needle glinting in the dim glow. "It's a smooth start, isn't it?" he said, seeking reassurance. She nodded, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "The men seem capable, but the cargo, those barrels, the fumes are stronger than I expected." The denatured alcohol, meant for industrial use, emitted a faint, acrid odor that seeped through the hold, especially in the warmth of the sun. Briggs had inspected the barrels himself. They were secure, but he couldn't ignore the potential hazard. Fires at sea were a captain's nightmare, and alcohol vapors could ignite with a spark. On deck, First Mate Richardson shared a pipe with Second Mate Gilling during the dog watch. "Captain's a good man," Richardson murmured, exhaling smoke that curled into the starry night. "Keeps a tight ship without the lash." Gilling, barely 25, grinned. "Aye, and his missus plays like an angel. Makes you forget the miles." But beneath the camaraderie, subtle tensions simmered. The Lorenzen brothers spoke in hushed German, their faces often grave. Gudshad, the Dane, kept to himself, staring at the horizon as if expecting something to emerge from it. Steward Head bustled in the galley, preparing meals of salt pork and hardtack, but even he noticed the odd creaks in the hull, normal for a wooden ship, yet amplified in the quiet. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of crimson, Sophia toddled across the deck, chasing a seabird's shadow. Sarah scooped her up, laughing, but Briggs watched with a father's protectiveness. "Stay close, little one. The sea is no playground." That night, a squall blew in, not fierce, but enough to test the rigging. The crew scrambled, reefing sails as rain lashed the deck. Briggs stood firm at the wheel, his coat slick, shouting orders that cut through the gale. By dawn, the storm passed, leaving the air crisp and the ship unscathed. But in the hold, a barrel had shifted slightly, its contents sloshing. No one noticed the faint hiss of escaping vapor, nor the way it mingled with the salt air. As the days blurred into one another, the Mary Celeste pressed on, her passengers, oblivious to the invisible threads of fate tightening around them. The ocean, ever deceptive, whispered promises of calm while harboring secrets in its depths. By mid-November, the Atlantic's mood shifted, the initial fair winds giving way to choppy seas and overcast skies. The Mary Celeste rolled with the swells, her timbers groaning like an old man protesting the cold. Captain Briggs noted the change in his log. November 18th, winds variable, barometer falling, crew vigilant. He confided in Sarah during a quiet moment in their cabin, the lantern swinging gently overhead. "We're making steady progress, but I sense a restlessness aboard." Sarah set aside her sewing, her brow furrowed. "The men, they whisper more now. And Sophia's been fussy, as if she feels it too." Indeed, the toddler had taken to clinging to her mother's skirts, her usual playfulness subdued. The alcohol fumes grew more pronounced, seeping into the living quarters, causing headaches and uneasy dreams. Briggs ordered the hatches open for ventilation, but the crew grumbled, fearing water ingress during rough weather. Tensions surfaced during meals in the mess. Steward Head served up a stew, but Volkert Lorenzen pushed his bowl away. "This ship, she's unlucky," he muttered in accented English, his brother Arian nodding solemnly. "Heard stories in port, ghosts from her old name." Richardson shot them a stern look. "Superstitions for fools. Captain knows his business." But Gilling, ever the observer, caught Gudshad exchanging glances with Boz Lorenzen, something unspoken passing between them. Was it discontent with the cargo, or the captain's strict no-alcohol rule? Briggs, aware of the undercurrents, led an extra prayer session that evening, Sarah's melodeon providing a soothing balm. Then came the night of November 24th. A fierce gale descended, waves crashing over the bow like thunderous applause. The ship pitched violently, sending unsecured items tumbling. In the hold, several barrels broke free, rolling and colliding with dull thuds. Briggs, lashed to the wheel, bellowed. Orders. "Secure the cargo, reef the mainsail." The crew battled the elements, rain stinging their faces, the deck slick and treacherous. Below, Sarah huddled with Sophia, singing softly to calm the child's cries. "Hush now, my darling, the storm will pass." But a sudden crash echoed from the hold, a barrel splitting open, alcohol spilling in a pungent flood. Vapors rose thick and fast, filling the air with a choking haze. Men coughed and retched as they worked to contain the mess, their lanterns flickering dangerously close to the flammable liquid. Dawn brought respite, the gale abating to a sullen drizzle. The damage was assessed, 9 barrels lost or leaking, but the ship intact. Briggs entered in the log. "Storm encountered, minor cargo loss, all hands accounted for." Yet an air of foreboding settled over the vessel. Whispers of mutiny or madness circulated in hushed tones. That afternoon, as the sun pierced the clouds, a crewman spotted something in the water. A dark shape, perhaps a sea creature or debris, vanishing before it could be identified. Eyes turned skyward, watching for omens in the wheeling gulls. Unseen, the vapors lingered, insidious and invisible, weaving through the ship like a serpent. Briggs felt a growing dread, a premonition that the sea's trials were far from over. As night fell, the Mary Celeste sailed on, her secrets deepening with every league. The morning of November 25th dawned with an eerie calm, the sea a glassy mirror reflecting the leaden sky. Captain Briggs emerged from his cabin, his face drawn, having spent the night in fitful sleep, haunted by dreams of engulfing waves. The log entry was brief. At 5 a.m., sighted land, St. Mary's Island, Azores. Position 38°20 N, 17°15 W. It was their last confirmed sighting, a fleeting brush with civilization before the ocean swallowed them whole again. Sarah noticed her husband's unease as they breakfasted in the cabin. Sophia played with a wooden doll, oblivious, while the melodeon sat silent in the corner. "Benjamin, what's troubling you? The storm's behind us." He rubbed his temples, the alcohol fumes still heavy in the air. "The cargo, it's unstable. And the crew. I overheard talk last night, fears of explosion, of the ship being cursed." He had confronted Richardson privately, who admitted the men's growing paranoia. The leaking barrels had sparked rumors. Fumes, driving men mad, or perhaps pirates lurking in these waters, drawn by the valuable load. On deck, the atmosphere thickened. Gilling approached Briggs hesitantly. "Sir, the men request we pump the bilges more often. The vapors, they're making us lightheaded." Briggs agreed, ordering extra watches, but his own head throbbed, visions blurring at the edges. Was it the fumes or something more sinister? Sarah, too, felt it, a oppressive weight, as if the ship itself breathed unease. That afternoon, a strange incident unfolded. While inspecting the hold, Boz Lorenzen cried out, claiming he saw a figure in the shadows, a ghostly apparition, he swore, vanishing into the gloom. The others dismissed it as fancy, but the tales spread like wildfire. By evening, the crew gathered, in uneasy clusters, sharing stories of past voyages gone awry. Head prepared supper, but appetites waned. Plates were left half-eaten, coffee cooling untouched. As twilight deepened, Briggs stood alone at the rail, staring into the abyss. The sea whispered secrets, waves lapping rhythmically against the hull. Sarah joined him, wrapping her shawl tighter. "Promise me we'll make it to Genoa," she said, softly. "I promise," he replied, though doubt gnawed at him. That night the wind picked up again, not a gale, but a persistent howl that set the rigging singing. In the captain's quarters, a sword hung on the wall, a relic from Briggs's earlier days, its blade recently cleaned but now streaked with what looked like rust or blood. No one recalled how it got there. Sleep eluded many. Whispers turned to arguments below decks, voices rising and falling like the swell. Did mutiny brew in the fetid air? Or was it collective delusion, the fumes twisting minds? Briggs rose before dawn, charting their course, but his hand trembled on the sextant. The Mary Celeste pressed forward, teetering on the edge of chaos, her fate hanging by a thread as fragile as a spider's web. Dawn on what would be their final day broke with a deceptive serenity, the sun rising pale and distant. Captain Briggs, his eyes shadowed from sleeplessness, made his last log entry. November 25th, Eastern Point bears SSE, 5 miles distant. The words, inked with a steady hand, belied the turmoil brewing aboard. The alcohol vapors hung thicker now, a miasma that infiltrated every corner, fueling hallucinations and fear. Sarah prepared breakfast in the galley with Head's help, her movements mechanical. Sophia whimpered, sensing the tension, and Sarah hummed, a lullaby to soothe her. There, my sweet. Soon we'll be on solid ground." But her voice cracked, betraying her own anxiety. Up on deck, Briggs conferred with Richardson. "The men are on edge. We must maintain order." "Aye, sir," Richardson replied, though his face was ashen. "Goodshod swears he heard voices last night, ghosts calling from the deep." Superstition gripped the crew like a vice. The Lorenzen brothers prayed in German, their rosaries clutched tight. Gilling, trying to lighten the mood, joked about mermaids, but his laughter rang hollow. Then, chaos erupted. A shout from the hold. "Fire! Vapors igniting!" Panic surged as men rushed below, but there was no flame, only a barrel hissing, its contents evaporating rapidly in the confined space. The air grew toxic, eyes watering, throats burning. Briggs ordered evacuation to the deck, his commands sharp. "Ventilate! Get the pumps working!" In the confusion, accusations flew. "The captain's cargo will kill us all!" someone yelled. Perhaps Boz Lorenzen, his voice laced with desperation. Briggs drew his sword instinctively, not to threaten but to rally, yet in the dim light it gleamed ominously. A scuffle broke out, fists flying briefly before order was restored. No blood was shed, but the incident left scars. Sarah, clutching Sophia, emerged from the cabin, her face pale. "Benjamin, what's happening?" "Fear's taken hold," he admitted, sheathing the sword. "We may need to abandon ship if it worsens." The lifeboat, a yawl capable of holding all 11 souls, was readied. But the sea remained calm, no storm, no visible peril. Was it madness driving them? The fumes perhaps erupting in a waterspout or a freak wave, convincing them of imminent doom. As the sun climbed, the decision crystallized. Briggs, ever cautious, opted for safety. "Into the boat," he ordered, his voice steady amid the dread. They lowered the yawl, loading provisions hastily. Chronometer, papers, Sarah's melodeon left, behind in the rush. The family boarded first, followed by the crew, their faces etched with terror. The Mary Celeste, sails partially set, drifted away as they rowed toward what they hoped was salvation, perhaps aiming for the Azores or signaling a passing ship. But the ocean, vast and merciless, had other plans. A sudden squall, a rogue wave, or simply the folly of panic. Whatever befell them, the yawl vanished into the expanse, leaving the brigantine to sail on, empty and enigmatic, a vessel bereft of her guardians. Back in the present, as the Dei Gratia towed the spectral Mary Celeste toward Gibraltar, Captain Morehouse paced his deck, the mystery gnawing at him like a persistent ache. The boarding party had returned with tales that chilled the blood. The abandoned meals, the child's toy, the bloodied sword. "It's as if they stepped off into thin air," DeVoe reported, his voice low. Morehouse nodded grimly. "We'll let the salvage court decide, but I fear foul play." Rumors spread among his own crew, pirates perhaps, or a mutiny quelled in violence. Yet the ship showed no signs of struggle. Hatches were open, not battered, and the cargo untouched. DeVoe volunteered to skeleton crew the Mary Celeste, taking 2 men aboard to navigate her to port. Aboard the ghost ship, the atmosphere was suffocating. DeVoe explored the cabins, finding Sarah's sewing unfinished, a vial of sewing machine oil upright on the table, defying the rolls of the sea. In Briggs' quarters, the log lay open to that final entry, the ink fresh as if written moments ago. The melodeon stood silent, its keys waiting for fingers that would never return. Nights were the worst. The empty vessel creaked and sighed as if mourning her lost souls. DeVoe's men whispered of shadows moving in the hold, of faint music echoing from below. "It's her," one said, "the captain's wife, playing for the dead." Superstition or exhaustion? DeVoe dismissed it, focusing on the task, but sleep evaded him, haunted by visions of Briggs's family adrift. They arrived in Gibraltar on December 13th, the Mary Celeste docking like a relic from another world. Vice Admiralty Court officials swarmed aboard, led by Attorney General Frederick Solly Flood, a man of sharp intellect and sharper suspicions. Murder, most likely, he declared, eyeing the sword stains, later proven to be rust, not blood. Divers checked the hull for damage, none found. The cargo, save 9 barrels, was intact. Interrogations followed. Morehouse and DeVoe testified, their accounts meticulous. Theories abounded. Mutiny over the alcohol, with the crew killing the officers and fleeing, or insurance fraud, though Briggs owned shares in the ship. Solly Flood even suspected Morehouse of collusion, given their acquaintance, but evidence was scant. As weeks turned to months, the inquiry deepened the enigma. No trace of the yawl or its occupants ever surfaced. The sea had claimed them utterly, leaving only echoes in the wind-swept decks. The salvage hearing concluded in March 1873, awarding Morehouse and his crew 1/700, a fraction of the cargo's value, tainted by suspicions of foul play. The Mary Celeste, cleared of ghosts but not mystery, was sold and resumed sailing under new owners. Yet her legend grew, whispered in taverns from New York to London. A ship cursed, her crew spirited away by sea monsters, aliens, or the Bermuda Triangle, an anachronistic myth, but potent nonetheless. In the years that followed, theories proliferated. Some posited a waterspout, sucking the crew overboard. Others erupting alcohol fumes, creating a false alarm of fire, prompting hasty abandonment. A seaquake, perhaps, shaking the vessel and instilling terror. Pirates were dismissed. No valuables. The crew's belongings remained, suggesting no premeditation. Sarah's brother, Oliver Cobb, mourned publicly, clinging to hope that they survived on some distant shore. But the Atlantic, vast and unforgiving, offered no answers. The Mary Celeste met her own end in 1885, deliberately wrecked for insurance, a final irony. Today she endures in lore, a symbol of the sea's inscrutable depths. What dread compelled Briggs to abandon a seaworthy ship? Did fumes cloud judgments, or did something more arcane lurk? The ghost ship sails eternal in imagination, her decks empty, her secrets locked in the abyss, a haunting reminder that some mysteries, like the ocean itself, remain forever unsolved.